Welcome back. I'm Bob Nightingale with Datum 1, and we're going to go through the code piece to create this Octordle trainer. This video is part 2 of a two-part video on how to create this spreadsheet, which helps you play the game Octordle. And if you haven't seen the first part, click on the link below the description and watch that first. It'll make a lot more sense. In the first part, we laid out the spreadsheet. We put the grid lines around the cells of interest. We inserted the buttons and the combo box and essentially put all the front end lipstick on this spreadsheet. Now this video, this is the part 2, where we're actually going to get into the Visual Basic for Applications code. So let's begin. The VBA code does many things. It remembers which words were solved from the last time the game was played. Whenever the spreadsheet gets saved, it will keep track of that from one time to the next. It sets up the hints drop-down, resets the game, checks if the words are on the word list, it sets the green and yellow cells telling you which letters have been matched to which words, it keeps the score, it generates hints, and detects the end of the game. And we'll go through each of those things in the following slides. So if you don't want to type everything in from the following slides, you can go ahead and download a copy of the source code from my GitHub page. And then you can have it on the side and follow along. But either way, I'm going to go through all the code that's in this project, and so let's begin. So to get to the code editing, you have to go to the Developer tab and then click View Code, or alternatively, you can click Alt F11 to bring up the code screen, and then you need to type Control R there to bring up the project browser if it's not already up. Now, how you get the Developer tab to show is something that I went over in the first part video. So if you don't have that, then you need to go back to the first video, and we're going to continue on here. In order for us to keep track of variables across worksheets, we need to put the global variable in a module. So in order to create a module, you right click on the Microsoft Objects line and then create a new module called Module 1 by clicking on Insert Module. So in order to keep track of which words were solved, we're going to create a public Boolean array called solved and type it in as it's shown here. The code associated with the workbook does two things. It sets options when the workbook is opened, and it reacts to when the reset button is pressed. Once the reset button is pressed, it calls the sub called reset game, and it resets all the options on the guesses and answers for a new game. From the reset game sub, it calls the sub make most cells read only, which sets most of the cells on the guesses tab to read only because you only want the cells in the guesses column to be typed into. To type in code for the workbook, you double click on this workbook in the project browser. The solve code gets the value from the solved cell that we previously defined and then splits it into a Boolean array called solved. Then the code goes and adds the items into the hint word dropdown and sets the default value to word 1. The reset game subroutine is called when the reset button is pushed. It resets the list of words that have been solved, it clears the guesses and the word match areas, and it also resets the hint list. The next section resets the words that are on the answers worksheet. What it does is it clears the words that are currently there, and then what it does is it scans the word list for more words, and what it does is that after it adds a word and then checks for the next word to make sure that it does not use the same word more than once in the answer fields. The last things that the reset game sub does is it resets the letters A to Z in the remaining letters field, and then it goes ahead and resets the scores and sets the cursor back to the first cell for the guesses. Okay, now let's move on to the guesses sheet. To bring up this window, double click on the sheet 1 guesses. It starts off with the hint word change. When the hint word combo box is changed, what it does is it clears the contents in the hint list. The reset click button runs when the reset button is pushed, and that will go ahead and execute the code that we saw in the previous slides. The other two subs that are called on the guesses sheet are worksheet change and hint click. Those will be shown in the following slides, and those are the largest in this project. The hint click sub is an event which is triggered when the hint button is pushed. First, what it does is it creates a copy of the word list in a collection, which is a memory structure. It's a list that's indexed. And for each word that is guessed, the hint words are deleted out of the collection if a green letter does not appear in that position in that same spot in the word. And if there's a yellow letter in question, it checks to see if the word has that yellow letter in it at all. Then it goes through the list and checks if a yellow letter appears in the same position as the hint word, which is not allowed. And then what it does is takes a look at the letter counts if there's a letter guessed, and makes sure that the same number of guessed letters are in that word. So if you guess the word event, but the word is agree, then you'd have two E's that are in yellow. So all the hint words that are left are going to be very similar to agree, which has two E's in it, but those E's will not be in the positions where event was. And then that hint list is posted back onto the guesses worksheet. The first part of this hint click sub is just setting up variables that I'm going to use. They also have setting up ranges and just some housekeeping stuff. The next part of the code is it assigns the collection from the list that is on the word list, each of the words there. And then what it does is it removes from the collection words that have already been guessed, exact matches. And that is why when creating the collection that the item and the key are identical. When you're using a collection, you can index it by number or by string, and here I'm addressing the keys by string, which is identical. So that is going to work out well for how I'm using or abusing the collections here. The heart of the hint click sub is a nested loop. The outer loop looks at all 14 of the possible guesses, and then it assigns the current guess it's looking at to the current guess string. If there's no guess, then it exits the for loop. Then the inner loop looks at each of the 5 letters that are in the current guess, and then what it does is it counts the number of letters that are in the word that we're trying to examine. And it's important to know the number of letters that are guessed. So if the current letter doesn't match the words that are in the matched letters grid, then it will remove that letter, or remove the words that are in the hint list that contain that letter. So it'll scan the hint collection and then remove those words. So the next scan of the collection will look at the green letters that are in the matched words range. And if there's a green letter, what it will do is scan the collection for all words that don't match the letter in that position and remove them. For a letter that's in a yellow shaded box, it's a little bit more involved. The collection is scanned for two conditions there. First is if the letter is not in the word, then those words are deleted from the collection. The second one is if the letter matches the same position, then that can't be one of the resulting words. So both those conditions, either one of those conditions, that will get the word removed from the collection. The next thing is we go back to the occur count variable, that if we have more than one of that letter detected in the guess word, then what I'll do is take a look at how many times the letter appears in the words that are in the collection. So the words have to have that letter repeated at least as many times as in the guessed word. And if it doesn't, well then that word gets removed. Once the inner and outer loops have processed the letters and the guess words, then the collection is written to the hint list on the guesses worksheet, and the worksheet is protected again, and that ends the sub. The next sub that's in this class is the worksheet change, and looking back, I probably should have broken this up into many smaller procedures, but I didn't, and so let's just take a look at what we do have here. This event fires whenever a cell is changed on the guesses worksheet. This can be a very recursive procedure because as a cell is updated by this procedure, it gets called again. So there's a lot of effort in making sure that the exit subs that are nested throughout this procedure are in the correct places so that when it calls itself, it can exit as quickly as possible without having to rerun too much code. It only reacts to changes that are in the guesses range. This spreadsheet is protected, and early on in the first video, I had you unlock just the guesses range so that when the spreadsheet gets protected, only the guesses range can be operated on. However, other pieces of code will update parts of the guesses spreadsheet. So this code is only going to react to changes that are in the guesses range. Some of the things that it does is checks that the word guessed is a 5-letter word. It reacts if the word is too small, it deletes it. If it's too large, it truncates it. It updates the matched letters fields and scores, and announces the end of the game. It does some other little things along the way too, but like I said, it's going to do a lot, so feel free to pause and rewind this part of the video because this is where you could make a lot of mistakes just trying to type in the code without understanding what it does. Well, the first part of the code sets up some variables that are going to be used farther down. The first block there, the first if and block, reacts to only changes that are in the guesses range, and if it's anywhere else in the worksheet, then it exits the sub. And I have it at the next if and block, if the data type that is in the cell in question is of type variant, or a variant function, then it exits a sub. That happens when the reset button is pushed, and it pushes some stuff into the cells which get deleted. So it does fire up this sub at that time. The next block is it checks to see if it is a string or empty, or if it's Boolean, which surprised me at first while I was testing. We want to have in that guesses cell a string, and we want it to be a 5-character string that matches what's on the word list. That's what you're going to get most of the time. If a cell has not been changed, or if it's been erased and it's empty, well, then that's a legitimate cell to work with, and we'll work with that farther down. The last thing it checks is if it's Boolean. The word false is 5 letters, and it does appear on the word list. It's a real word, but false is of Boolean data type, and so it's allowed. It's checked later as a text string rather than a Boolean condition. So those are the 3 types that are allowed. If it's any other type, like currency or division by 0 error, that will cause a message box to pop up and say only 5-letter words are allowed. Then it clears the cell and exits the sub. Now this is the first instance where a procedure is done against the target cell, clearing the contents, and so what that does is it fires this procedure again, gets to the part where it's empty, and then it goes ahead and passes through. So the next 2 if and blocks are pretty simple. If the cell is empty, which may have done from the last if block, then it just exits. There's nothing further to be done. If the cell has a string which is larger than 5 characters, then its value is trimmed down to 5 characters. So this next if block reacts if the string in the guess cell in question is less than 5 characters. You get a message box popping up that only 5-letter words are allowed. It clears the cell and then sets the focus back on the cell if it's moved off because the enter key was hit. And then it unprotects the worksheet, and then it clears the letters and the colors, whether green or yellow, on that row on the matched words grid. And then it sets the font color back on the target cell and protects the worksheet again before exiting the sub. The next if blocks are also pretty simple. If the word does not have all uppercase letters, then it gets uppercase letters and the sub is exited, so it can be further interrogated in the next pass. Then it checks each of the characters to make sure they're between A and Z for each letter, and if it does not pass that test, you get an error message. Contents are cleared. The focus is set back to the cell, and then you exit from the sub. Of course, when you clear the contents, guess what? The procedure is triggered again. So now we've gotten past the steps where, yes, it's a string, it's 5 characters, it's A through Z, it's all in uppercase now. Now we check to make sure that the word is on the word list. And if it is not on the word list, what it does is it sets the word to red. It gives you a message saying, hey, this word is not on the word list. The focus is put onto the cell, and then the matched word list to the right is cleared out. And the cell is protected again, and then you exit from the sub. Okay, now at this part, we've passed all the checks, and if you've come into this sub with the text red from the previous error message, now it gets set to black here. And you remove the letters from the remaining letters list, that's the A through Z, by matching the 5 letters that are in your target text word. Now we're going to take the word that was guessed in the target text and we're going to compare it with the 8 words that are in the answers range. So that's the cur word for each one of those. If the word has already been solved, then we go to the next word in the loop. And I think this is the only place in the whole project where I use a go to. So sorry, you purists, but sometimes you do need to use a go to. There's no continue structure in VBA, so that's why it is here. So it continues on to the next word, skipping all the other code in between, and there's quite a bit here. Okay, so then what it does is it takes a look to see if there's an exact match. If your guess matches one of the words on the answer word list, well then the Boolean array element is set to true for that word, and the solved variable is masked and it is set to the value so that it then gets updated with the indicator of which word was solved, so that the next time this runs through, this word will be skipped and won't be processed. Oh, and one more thing. The scores are updated below each of the words that are solved, and the score that you get is how many chances or how many turns did you take to guess that word, and that is put at the bottom of the word in that part of the guesses worksheet. This next part of the code, it loops through each of the letters in the alphabet A through Z, and design-wise, this was the hardest choice I had to figure out. Do I want to check for every letter in the alphabet and then see if it's in the guessed word, or do I want to process each letter in the guessed word? And so I went this way, and it's working fast enough. So it checks first to see if the word appears in the target word in the guesses, and if it does, then does that word also appear in the answer word, and if it does not, then it hops out. If it does, then now we're into the game of which letters are going to be set green and which ones are going to be set yellow. So what I do with the next 4i block for I1 to 5 is I use 2 binary arrays, one to indicate that this letter matches the is in the guess word, and is this letter matching any of the letters that are in the answer letter. Now the next 4i block is taking a look to see if the letters match exactly, and if they do, then those letters are set to green, and then those letters are removed from the same position in the binary arrays. And that's important for the next part where we start looking at where to put the yellow letters. Okay, to check the existence of letters that are yellow, I have a nested loop here where the outer loop looks at the positions of the letter in the letter placeholder array, and the inner loop examines the answer placeholder array. So if there is any letters left in the answer placehold array for those that are in the letter placehold, then that letter is placed into the matched words area, and then it's set to yellow. So once an occurrence of that happens, then both elements, the element in both of those arrays are turned from true to false, and then the exit 4 means that we're not looking at any more of the answer words. And so the next time we process through the J loop is when there's any more letters that are left in the I loop in the placeholder array. So now we come to the end of the processing of all the letters, and then there's the label that gets us out of processing of all of the words. So at the end, it checks to see if all 8 words have been solved. If so, it pops up a message box that simply says success and protects the worksheet. Well, congratulations. You have made it through this project. For those of you who looked through the slides and didn't feel like typing in anything, you're welcome to go ahead and download all the code from the GitHub page I mentioned earlier. Then you can just import the classes and the basic code into your worksheets. Feel free to like and subscribe and follow and do all those social media thingies if you found this helpful. In addition to the YouTube channel, I also have a group on Facebook where I have mostly my electronic components hobby. I've been doing a lot of work with LEDs and shift registers and things of that nature. And I have ambitions to do some other things with hardware and software. So that's it for now. Thanks.